So, you've come back for more, have you? Well, before we get started, I do have to issue quite a grim warning. Much of the footage you will see today will contain upsetting imagery, as well as people being threatened with firearms. If these kinds of topics disturb you, then I advise that you don't continue with this video. But if you're still here, I must now tell you to be afraid. Be very afraid. Be very afraid.
It's showtime.
We established in the last episode of Video Scaries that television hijackings are more common than you'd think. Whether it's done as a joke, as a threat, as a way to spread messages or propaganda, every time that it happens, it sends those who control the stations into a frenzy. Well, how do you think they'd react when their station is hijacked by someone live in the studio, armed with a gun?
What is this?
He's got a speeded gun.
This thankfully has only happened on a few occasions over the course of television's short history, and today I'll be showing you two of these incidents, both taking place in the United States of America. First, let's go back to 1987, a familiar year if you watched our last episode, as it's the same year the Max Headroom incident took place. On August 19th, 1987, 3 months before Max broke into the airwaves, all was seemingly running well at KMBC TV Channel 4, based out of Los Angeles, California. The three news anchors presenting were David Horowitz, John Beard, and Kirsty Wilde. Horowitz was just beginning his piece tailored towards consumers, and specifically regarding mail-order tax. However, only a few words in, this happened.
You know, one of the nicest things about shopping by mail order... Pardon me? What is this?
Yeah, he's got a speeded gun.
Let me see what it says. All right.
He's got a gun to his back.
All right, well, let me read this. Folks, we have someone on the set who's standing here and would like me to read this copy which was just handed to me. You want to tell me your name or not? What is it? And Gary, where are you from?
What was meant to be normal everyday news had suddenly turned into something a lot more sinister. Viewers at home were seeing an intruder with a gun pointed at the news anchor's back. You can only imagine the shock and horror that those watching would have felt at the time. The decision was made to kill the microphones and go to black, replacing the live feed with a placeholder slide. Back in the newsroom, tensions were running high all around. Horowitz, however, despite having a gun aimed firmly at him, kept his cool and proceeded to read the statement that had been presented to him by the gunman.
When I began receiving disturbing calls from my parents, which led me to believe that something terrible was going on, I was then forced into a mental hospital in Tallahassee, where I learned that my brother-in-law had been driven insane in the same manner that someone was trying to do to me.
Whilst he was reading, the local police had been called and were already at the studio, attempting to find a good entry point so that if necessary, they could take this intruder down. Horowitz continued to read as if he was delivering the day's regular bulletin, and when he concluded the message, much to everyone's surprise, the mystery man placed the gun down on the desk, to which it was quickly grabbed by Beard, and being armed no longer, this was the moment the security and police forces stormed the set, yanking the intruder away from the view of the cameras and arresting him almost as quickly. The gun he had brought in was revealed to be a very convincing-looking replica.
I asked for a congressional investigation and federal protection for my family and these involved. There is no way I can harm anyone with this empty BB gun.
Bet some of you were holding your breath watching all that. But despite being a really surprising and undeniably tense situation to begin with, it's nice to see that the outcome of this incident wasn't as gruesome as it so easily could have been. The gunman was identified as Gary Stolman, who was the son of a pharmacist and Channel 4 News team member, Max Stolman, who would often give reports on medical topics to the viewers. It is this father-son relationship that allowed Gary to enter the studio with relative ease. He asked the receptionist if he could watch the recording, citing his dad's former work and employment with the station. Showing no initial signs of anything suspect, Gary was allowed to enter and watch the filming. Sadly, Gary had had a long history with mental health issues. Remember, back in 1987, there were nowhere near as many outlets for mental health as there is today, and Gary had in fact been hospitalised on a number of occasions. This does feed into the message Gary presented Horowitz to read. A lot of it comes off as, rambling nonsense with a distinct air of rampant paranoia. Gary was unfortunately a very sick man, a statement that was echoed by his father, Max. When questioned, Gary claimed he had never intended to hurt anyone, and simply wanted his message heard. I don't have any further information as to where Gary ended up with his mental health issues, but I can only hope that somewhere down the line, he got the help that he needed.
Max Stolman said, "I do have a sick son. He has been hospitalized a number of times. I am thankful he wasn't killed."
Let's move on to our second and final gunman hijacking. We're still in the United States, but going back even further to 1982. We jump from California to the state of Arizona, the city of Phoenix. The unfortunate station this time was Cool TV, an affiliate of CBS. Cool News 10 Live at 5 was going out as normal, but what viewers didn't see, close by in another section of the Cool TV building, a hostage situation was taking place. 29-year-old Joseph Gwynn forced his way into the Cool TV building, his decision to do so based on the fact he had an encounter with God. God has supposedly told him that there was going to be such things as a civil war in the United States and that World War III was somewhat imminent. Gwynn had been spotted around the Cool TV building before, first attempting to gain entry by claiming he wanted to view some tapes, to which he was denied, and then he was spotted down an alley that separated two Cool TV buildings. And despite these suspicious sightings, the local police were never notified.
And he showed me in visions and dreams how God showed me what was going to happen in the future. Those cities are going to be built and there's going to be destroyed. There's going to be civil war in America, and America is going to be divided up.
After gaining the entry he sought, Gwynn seized a newsroom that had several hostages. This included members of the production crew, one of which was production assistant Louis Villa, whom Gwynn placed in a chokehold and kept him at gunpoint for hours. Oh yeah, this situation wasn't a quick few minutes like 1987 was. After initially taking the newsroom just after 5 PM, this began a 4.5-hour period of tension and lives being held in the balance. Veteran news anchor Bill Close was also one of the hostages, but right from the get-go, Close remained as cool as possible, continually talking to Gwynn, hearing what he had to say and what his demands were. 2 hours in, just after 7 PM, Gwynn released 2 production members from being hostages. Bill Close at this point was communicating consistently with law enforcement via a phone in the newsroom. At around 7:30 PM, Gwynn verbally issued a death threat, which made everyone watching at Cool TV even more tense. The motive was now clear. Gwynn wanted to be seen on television, broadcasting live to the viewers of Phoenix, Arizona, so that his message could be heard and taken in. After injuring Villa before getting him in the chokehold and firing a shot to prove the firearm he was carrying was in fact the real deal, police negotiations had a tough decision to make. If they refused to let Gwynn go on the air, there was a very real risk that he could start killing all of his hostages, one by one. The alternative was to let him go live on the air, at the benefit of saving most of the hostages, leaving only Bill Close in the room with him, as he was going to be the one reading the statement. Considering human life was very much at stake, at 9:30 PM, 4.5 hours after the whole affair began, the decision was made to go to air, with Close and Gwynn, regardless of what the message may be or contain. With regular programming interrupted and cameras rolling, Bill Close began reading out a 20-minute statement, written by Gwynn himself, detailing his fears that had been grown from his encounter with God. I won't play you the full reading, but show you some selected highlights instead. If you want to see the full reading, that is available on YouTube. And keep in mind, whilst you can't really see it, throughout this whole broadcast, Bill Close has a loaded gun pointed very accurately at his stomach.
This is the script that Mr. Gwynn gave me, and I'm going to read it verbatim. And anytime you wish to interrupt me. All right. My name is Joe Gwynn. I am a watchman. Read the 33rd chapter of Ezekiel. This is about the story of the 10 prophets. The 10 prophets are Johnny Cash, Ronnie Millsap, Eddie Rabbitt, Larry Gatlin, Hank Williams Jr., Rex Allen Jr., Willie Nelson, Conway Twitty, Loretta Lynn, Lacey J. Dalton, Tanya Tucker, Barbara Mondrell, Joe Gwynn, the traitor. Islam knew why and arranged for us to meet. We talked very little with each other. Lucy J. Dalton wrote a song for me that day. It's called Mistakes. Islam is using something called sociology on children in schools across America today. Sociology is the study of the human condition. In the next 2 years, there will be 5 new cities started in the United States. These will be major cities. Only men, white Anglo men, will be living in these cities. They will be completed in 1994. There will be about 15 million men in these cities by July of 1994. Yes.
Okay, these men that are going to be living in these cities are homosexual,
Okay.
and I am a homosexual, and these are my brothers.
Yes.
Okay, continue.
All right. World War III begins in the fall of 1988. Edward Kennedy will be the next president. He will be elected for 2 terms. Now, at the end of World War III in 1994, our troops will be coming home from war. On July 4th of 1994 at 12 noon, there will be 20 million men in these 5 cities. Islam is going to blow these cities up with atomic bombs. After this happens, there will be civil war in America. The southern states of America will be invaded in about 2006 to 2016 from an army from Brazil. That war will last 6 months. In the last 16 years of my life, I have had communications through mental telepathy with all of the peoples named. Here is my story. When I was a little boy, about 5 years old, I did something called astral projection. My spirit took a walk out of my body. I was frightened. Our country will no longer be the United States. The Latin Americans will be the same to us as we were to the Indians. The Bible says that there would be an alliance between the 2 northern powers that border at the polar circle. Russia is one and Canada is the other, unless about 70 million people migrate to Canada and make it a power. Our forefathers were liars, murderers, thieves, sinned against God, brought to America in chains.
Stop. I have something to say for Reagan. Okay, President Reagan, Islam is using sociology on your son, Ricky. Ricky, tell your father what they're doing. They're using sociology and that they use it to turn you into a punk. This is our last chance. We can only do this when your father is in office. Let's stop these people. This is our only chance to stop them from using sociology on anybody again.
My first prediction is the fall of Great Britain by Argentina. London will be destroyed by an atomic bomb. Britain won't even fight back. They won't even resist. This will be the fall of Britain. Johnny Cash, you will have 72 hours to tell the Queen to evacuate London. I want to stop Islam from what they are doing and help my people find their history book. Sometime in the next 2 to 5 years, there will be an invasion of ants in Arizona, the Brazil fire ant. Between the years 1995 and 2000, there will be a war in Asia between Indonesia and Japan. Islam is behind it all. Islam wants to destroy our people. And that's the end of what you wrote for me to read, Mr. Gwynn.
Okay.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say?
No, no more.
Is that it?
That's it.
Can we now, can I say something like we now return to our regular programming? This has been a special broadcast that Mr. Gwynn insisted that we make. We hope that you understand and will bear with us. We think that his message is a very important one to him. We appreciate your attention. And now we return you to our regular programming. I got a sweaty palm. I want to shake hands with you.
You really do, huh?
You bet. I told you I was playing this fair. Did you think you didn't trust me all this time? Oh, hell, it's all right. Leave him alone. It's okay. Put down the guns. I have the gun. Back off with the guns.
Well, that was interesting, wasn't it? Obviously, I only played you some highlights, and if you can even call them that, from the speech Gwyn had written up. When you watch the full thing, he does repeat himself a lot, constantly reading out the names of the 10 prophets, the names of the 5 cities to be built, the supposed Third World War on the way. It's a lot of rambling, quite frankly. Massive props have to go to newsreader Bill Close, who played the whole thing as chill as anything, and even shook hands with Gwyn afterwards, never once trying to make him feel patronised or talked down to. Thankfully, once the statement ends, we see Close move the gun away from Gwyn, who is then arrested by police. It's an interesting point that both the cases we've looked at today involve the hijacker brandishing a weapon, only to peacefully give it up once their statement has been read. After his arrest, he was declared insane and thrown in jail. where he would stay until 2005, upon which he was then released. Although I don't know whether he's still alive, whether he's still around, really is a bit of a mystery. But the main thing that can be taken away is that thankfully no one got seriously hurt. Whereas Stallman's Act in '87 produced only a toy gun, Gwyn very much was carrying the real thing. If these two incidents in the 1980s show anything, it's that A, security in TV stations has more than tightened up now so that stuff like this can never happen again, and B, is it any coincidence that both of these cases happened in the US, a place with very loose laws about carrying firearms? I'll let that sit with you for a while. But whilst no one in either case was killed, the professionalism and calm of the newsreaders at Gunpoint is both commendable and inspiring. That even when faced with the prospect of death, these guys kept all the composure that they could, and delivered these statements as just like they would any other topic in the news.
And Gary, where are you from? I've covered enough hostage situations, and I've been in Vietnam, and I know that when someone points a gun at you, you do what they tell you to do, and hope that someone's going to save you.
Put the guy on live and let him give himself up. I know that we would have lost some commercial programming, but what the heck, Louis Villa's life was more important than that.
So that does about bring us to the end. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Video Scaries, and if you wish to see more, please leave a like and subscribe to us here at AMTV. I've been your host, Adam Martyn, and we hope to see you next time.